Hi, Martin here. Today I want to show you how to convert your hydraulic cooling fan to this electric fan that I am put in. Alright, we're going to go from a cooling fan that looks just like this to this. So let's get started. Alright, let's start by placing the fan on here. What I'm going to do is set it down on this one side here and then work on trimming this side to get it to lay down properly. So we've got a gap right there because the fan is just a little bit wider than the actual radiator. If this shroud would have been like an inch longer, it would have been absolutely perfect. Now you want to be very careful when we make our cuts here, not take off too much. I will take a measurement here, scribe a line, and then up in this area I'm going to take just a small amount off at a time. I'm going to have this, hopefully this edge here will overlap onto the radiator. Alright, right here you can see the line that I scored, and we'll just cut that with an oscillating saw. Well, before we get any further, I'm going to go ahead and remove this fan and the motor to make the whole thing lighter and more maneuverable. Those can be a little stubborn to get off. Sometimes a little lubricant will help. There's a 10mm socket. Now we're back at it. Here I'm cutting the edge off the opposite side, just to give it a little bit more cooling. That flat edge blocks a little bit of the cooling capacity there. And now just removing kind of that slag I'm getting from the saw blade. Alright, this is one of those times it's great to be a hoarder. I kind of got a bad habit of that. Well, this is some pieces of aluminum that I've gathered over the years that found this on a job site. This was being thrown away, and I'm like, heck, I can use that someday. Sure enough, for this project it's coming in handy. So what I've done is taken this, cut it down to this, and I'm going to make this work for at least one of the mounts right now. Alright, following day I'll show you what I got so far. I got one of the mounts pretty much made. I got that one mount here made out of that scrap metal I had laying around. I need to still drill a hole through the bottom of this plastic shroud and bring it up through the bottom. Alright, I got the one bolt hole drilled and tapped using a metric 6mm by 1.0, and then the hardware I'm using, these bolts are actually out of the header panel of your XJ. They work really nice because I like that big built-in washer. This is a Taurus T30. Alright, we'll get that bolted in place. Okay. One down, 3 to go. And I did some of this by using my drill press. In other words, what I call a poor man's mill. This is definitely not recommended because your drill press isn't made for your horizontal movements. It's made to go vertical. Okay, here's the next piece. Did some milling right there. So that fits down in there. Now I just got to shape it right back here to conform to that slight angle of the shroud. Alright, I got that mount made and bolted on there. Right there. There we go. Okay, I'll show you how that fits on there. Now all I need to do is drill the hole for the bolt and then build a duplicate one for the location right here. Alright, I got the third mount made right here. I've described the location for the hole. Alright, now with the third one in place, looking good right there. This feels very solid. I'm able to easily pick this up. Feels really good just with the three. Of course, we're going to build the fourth one here. So I'm going to start working on this last location here. This will be a little bit different. We got a really heavy angle right here, almost 45. Alright, after taking that leftover piece of aluminum that I had left laying around, I started with that. I cut it clear down to this. Right there. So that's all I got left over is that little piece that I need, which goes right here in that location. So I'm going to have one bolt going through this plastic right here into here. Then I'll drill the other hole to for the radiator. Alright, here we are the following day. I mean, it turned out really nice. I like the way this is in here. Very solid. It's not going anywhere. Now, down here at the bottom of this, right in here, you can still see the radiator. So we're not getting the full efficiency, of the fan. And what I'm going to do is modify this bottom portion right here. Now what I got here is a piece of plastic. It's probably about a 1/4 inch thick, maybe 3/16. What I'm going to do is fasten that to this beveled edge right here. This slope is about a 45-degree angle. Place it on here. We're going to get a measurement and we're going to cut it down to this edge here. Then I want to remove some of this here, and I'll be adding, so we'll be able to add all of this to the efficiency of this shroud. Alright, I had the shroud bolted into place. I placed this on here, got the 4 holes drilled, and fastened it down. And once I did that, I just took an awl and scribed a line on the back side, running it along the radiator and this plastic. And then I got the line that I need. So I'm going to cut along that line, and that should be the finished piece for that. Okay, I got that piece bolted on, and just simply placing some nuts on the back side here. Right. Bolt it into place. Get the fan motor reinstalled. And of course, this is just the radiator that we're mocking up on. This is my old radiator. Alright, I'm using a Flex-a-lite variable speed fan controller. Pretty cool unit. When it first comes on, it only supplies 60% of the power to the fan. So it's a kind of a soft touch to it. It hasn't got that big spike. And then as the temperature increases, it ramps up the RPM. And eventually you'll hit 100% RPM if the temperature ever gets that high. And then the one that I'm using, I got it where the thermostat goes into the radiator hose or the cylinder block or whatever you can tap into. And I'm using this radiator hose adapter right here. This is a 40 millimeter. This will fit either the upper or the lower radiator hose. And we're going to go into the upper one. That's the best location. Now, when you get this, it comes with an 1/8 NPT. We're going to need to re-drill that out so it'll accept the 1/4 NPT fitting right there. And then of course it all comes with all the wiring you're going to need. It's got a nice heavy duty fuse holder, 40 amp fuse, everything you need. Alright, the Flex-a-lite fan controller comes with the option if you want to turn it manually off or manually on as well as the automatic feature that it has. Well, I'd like to do that. And you could do either one of the options or both. Now I'm going to do both, and what I'm going to use is this Gamma double pole double throw switch. So it's all in one. Now have the center off position, which would then let the fan controller operate normally. And then if you want to force it off, let's say you want to put it in a vehicle that you're going to be doing deep water crossings and you don't want that fan to run in the water, or you want to turn it manually on and you want to force it on, maybe you want extra cooling. So the next thing is where to mount the switch. Well, this is where I'm going to put mine. It's right down here. I got the heated seat switches right here right now. Of course, this is just a compartment, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut in right in here and put that switch in, and then have room for future switches going across. Of course, this will eliminate the use of this being a little storage place for me. Alright, to remove this, pretty easy. What I'm going to do is just place my fingers in here, get a grip with your fingers, and pull. And out it comes. Alright, now just unplug all the connectors. Pushing the locking tabs. Alright, with that removed, I need to remove this plate right here. There's just two small T10 screws. Take those out and remove that plate. Alright, I placed a couple pieces of painter's tape here, and right at the bottom of these switches going across. Coincidentally, that ends up being the exact width I need to cut this switch open, for the opening of the switch. So now all I got to do is determine where I want to start my line, and then if I want to put any future switches in here, you know, leave room for them. So I'm thinking I'm going to go over here just about like that. Alright, I got the hole scribed. Now I'm going to get out my Dremel and we'll cut that out. Okay, as I'm getting this cut out, the one thing I wish I'd done is taken a drill bit and drilled to the inside of each corner. Because of the way the switch has the rounded corners, this would have turned out a lot better for me. Other than that, it came out just fine. Okay, one of the last things I want to do before we reinstall this here is I'm going to install this little blue LED light. As you can see, it's not overly bright, and that I did not want that. You know, I didn't want something super bright or anything. But I'm going to put that right here. I already drilled a pilot hole, and that will indicate to me when the electric fan comes on. And that way I can observe, do I want to tweak the adjustment on the Flex-a-lite fan controller a little bit, one way or the other. Now what I did back here, if you remember, there was that piece of metal that went right back here. Okay, I cut that up because I needed clearance for the switch there for the wires. Now I ran a couple screws right through the back of it, right there. And what those do is push on the back of this door. They don't go through the door or anything. And that way I can adjust that door so it's absolutely perfect with everything else. And not to mention, if we were to push on that switch, if we wouldn't have done anything, that door would just pop right open. So I got to keep it from doing that. And I also ran a screw right there, you can see that, right through the side of it, and that went into that ashtray part of it. And I also ran one right through the back. Alright, stop the presses here. I had something happen here where I messed up a little bit. On the manual off, manual on switches, okay? I looked at these diagrams they got right here, and you see that positive power source, and you're just thinking, okay, they need a positive trigger to activate either the manual off or manual on. Well, so I wired it that way. And then when I got looking over here at 5 and 6, it says negative override signal. All right. Well, so here I drew up this nice diagram for you guys, and that is garbage. The one you really need is this one. That tells you, for the switch that I used, how it's got to be wired. And the reason it is like this, okay, here's the negatives up here that are going to 5 and 6, and you got your ground. And what it's simply doing is completing a ground to make this work. And the reason you got the hots down here is to illuminate the bulbs on the switch. So I got to go back and rewire that, and I'll show you a nice close-up picture of this. You may want to pause on it if you're going to use the same switch I did. Alright, I got the switch all rewired. All the hots on this side, all the negatives on that side. I wired into the cigarette lighter or power port of the one that's controlled by the ignition switch. Got your grounds here, and I got my hots tied in. My one hot tied in right there. Alright, I'm ready to put this back in. Alright, after getting the switch installed, I went ahead and ran the wiring up through the firewall, and I came up through this cavity in here, and I actually ran it down inside the fender here, and then around up to the front. I'll show you where I'm going to put the controller. Now in most cases, probably yours, you're going to want to mount the controller somewhere under the hood. Now what I'm planning on doing is doing a wire tuck, and I've been doing that in stages on this vehicle. And I want to get rid of all these wires right here, and eventually all of this is probably going to go inside this fender. So that's why I went ahead and ran those wires in there. Then I brought the wiring up through here, and I got the controller mounted right there. And I covered everything up with the split loom, keep everything out of sight as much as I possibly can. And it's very hard to see any of this through the grill. I'll show you a few steps that I went through to get this right here, and the wiring I needed to do. Okay, this was an insulated butt splice, but I cut the insulation off because I want to keep the overall diameter down. I'm going to go ahead and solder that as well, and then slide heat shrink over that. And then this is the low side of the fan, which I'm not using. I'm just going to tuck that in with the wiring harness. Alright, I'm going to show you what I got going here. I'm going to of course cover this up with the loom. Right here I got the red wire coming from my LED to the positive side of the fan. Black wire going to the negative side of the fan. That way we see the LED come on when the fan comes on, when power is supplied to it. And I went ahead and used wire markers right there. You see the number 5 and 6 for terminals 5 and 6. So if I ever have to service this, I can take it off and not have to worry about where it goes. I did that with the rest of the wires down here too. Alright, got it covered up. Now the positive cable right here and the air conditioning wire I've got running this braided loom. And they come up to here. I got the fuse block mounted right here next to this fuse block. Alright, got just 2 more wires to run. I got the positive cable here that I got to the fuse block that's provided with the variable speed fan controller that I'm going to take right up here to this post that's hot all the time. Then we got the air conditioning control wire. So when the AC kicks on, the fan goes into 100% power, goes into high. So I've located, by looking right here in this diagram here, I've located the AC clutch relay, and I pulled that relay out. This side here is your hot side. This here would be your load side. So this is the wire that we're going to go to on the back side of this fuse block. Alright, now to get to the back side of this so we can wire up that air conditioning wire, using a 10mm socket, remove these 2 nuts that are holding on this positive wire coming from the battery. Make sure you disconnect your battery first. Now there are some locking clips on here that hold this fuse block to the battery tray. Mine are all broke. It's basically just sitting here. So if you unlock those by taking a small screwdriver in here, you can lift this off of here, Then there are 5 clips that hold the bottom of the fuse block cover. Release those with a small screwdriver and you can pull the cover off. Now I'll expose those wires. I went ahead and removed the radiator reservoir here just to make this a lot easier. See, I can tip this up, get right to the back side of it. I'm after this wire right here. It's going to simply take off some of this insulation, solder it onto here. Alright, once that liquid tape is dried, you can go ahead and replace this cover. Now what I'm going to do real quick is do a function test on the fan controller, making sure everything works. Since I don't have the fan in here yet, but the day I do, when I plug it in, I know everything's going to work just fine. Okay, we're going to force the fans on. See, our blue LED light comes on. That's telling me there's power going to the fan. Now I'll turn it off. Takes a moment for this power down. Okay, now I'm going to kick on the air conditioning. There again, blue LED comes on. Alright, right now what you're seeing is nothing but millivolts. So that's nothing at all. Now I'm taking the adapter I got here with the temp sensor. I'm going to apply some heat to it. Right there. You see it ramping up? It's getting hotter. There we go. Go all the way up to full power right there. Now if I pull the heat away, you're going to see the voltage drop right there. And there the fan shut off again. Or would have. Alright, one of the changes we got to make is the power steering pump. The reason is that high pressure line that is on this pump is so large, because right here is the fitting for it. And you see the size of that orifice, it's huge. And the thread size is also bigger than that. This is a orifice out of a standard pump, one that came with the non-hydraulic fan or even your 4.0 6-cylinder engines. So we got to get a pump from one of them and the line. Alright, we need to remove the belt. Go over to your tensioner. Alright, with a 13mm socket, you pass the socket through the pulley to the bolts. There's 3 of them. Alright, the return line, it it's a bit of a stretch now to get to the new location for the low pressure side. I can just barely get it there, and I just don't like the way it's routed. And like I say, it's a bit of a stretch getting it there. So what I'm going to do is pull that out and then replace it with this 3/8 oil resistant line, 20 inches. Alright, before I forget, I want to go ahead and fill the reservoir up with power steering fluid. This is from Redline. It's full synthetic, and this is the one that is recommended. And I'll bleed that system out after we get it fired up. And we go ahead and return the belt. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start reassembling it by starting with the bolts that hold the radiator in. Then place the condenser back into place. Make sure that you lift it up and get it on those clips on the very bottom down here, which is pretty easy. There, like that. Okay, now what we got to do is cut out a chunk of radiator hose right here. We're going to add this, our temp sensor in here. Alright, the last thing we got to do electrically is, you may even be wondering, I unplugged that electrical connector on the hydraulic cooling fan. Well, that was going to this solenoid. Now if we did nothing, we're going to throw an engine code. So there's two things you could do. You could either pull off that harness that's on the hydraulic cooling fan, plug it back in, plug your solenoid in, take it off your fan, plug it back in. The ECM or PCM will know no different. It sees the 10 ohms that this thing puts out, thinks everything is just fine. Now the problem with that is this also has some value. I mean, these things go for like $100, and you may want to resell your hydraulic cooling fan, or at least this part of it. Well, for like $9 or less, you can get yourself one of these 10 ohm 100 watt wire wound resistors, and we're going to run the two wires across this, and then there's a ground wire. We'll just ground it. And again, the ECM sees the 10 ohms that it's looking for, thinks everything's normal. It can sit there and send signals to this, doesn't know any different. So we'll get that done, and we'll get the coolant put in this thing, and we're ready to fire it up. Okay, after cutting the connector off that went to the fan controller, I take the 2 wires that ran to the solenoid, solder 1 wire to each side of the resistor. Now I'm applying liquid tape. This stuff works really well, dries really fast, and it's very durable. Does a great job. You can go ahead and apply a couple coats. You just got to wait like maybe 10 minutes, and then you can apply another coat if you like. Alright, now fasten it down. I'm using some little small self-tapper screws here. Now I'm crimping a ring terminal onto the ground wire that was fastened to the hydraulic fan, or led to the hydraulic fan. I always like to solder everything. Now remove the 1 screw that I installed first and use that as my ground. And we're done. Alright, now for the most important part of this whole build is getting the antifreeze back in this thing. And I mean, it's important. What I believe to be the #1 cause of valve seat drop on these motors, improper purging of the cooling system. You cannot just fill it up and top it off and hope that the air works out and the reservoir is going to do the job for you. It's not going to happen. Absolutely the most important part of this. Make sure you get this plug out. There we go, right there. Alright, now we're going to fire it up. Let it run, let it get up to normal operating temperature, and you're going to see a lot more air come out of here. This is what's important. We didn't get near all the air out of this thing yet. See those bubbles coming out of there? See those bubbles coming out of there? Playing with the fan a little bit. It's coming on right now. And I'm looking at the temperature gauge, and it's like at 177, 174. I want to adjust it right to 180 right now. And we'll see how that works out. Alright, to adjust these, you got the little screw right down here, a little adjustment screw. Using a small blade screwdriver. Now this red LED indicates we got power to it. Now if I turn this down, there we go. You see that red LED came on? Turn it counterclockwise to lower the temperature that you desire. Now turn it just ever so slightly. Take your time doing this. I can hear the RPM going down there. and the fan turned off. There, the fan just shut off. Fan's firing up. And it's telling me it's 181. I'm going to call that perfect for right now. Even after all this time, I can still see some air bubbles coming out of here. This takes quite a while. Now this whole time, it's still been holding it right at 181 degrees. And I think I've heard the fan RPM come up just a little bit. I think I kind of like this mod. It has that little bit of extension right there, so you can really get the air out, and you got the utmost coolant in this system. It's got like an O-ring cap to it. Alright, I just shut the engine off. The fan's still running, and it's supposed to do that for 30 seconds and then shut off. Voila! Check out all that room I got now. Okay, I've been driving it now for well over a week. I tell you, I cannot be happier with the results of this fan. It works so well. I actually bumped up the temperature a little bit. I got a 180 thermostat in here, and the 181 was causing the fan to run more than I needed it to. So I turned it up to 185. Now the fan actually shuts on and off because the motor seems to run at around 185 if the cooling capacity is there. So the thermostat is now doing its job. Absolutely love this, so highly recommend it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, give me a thumbs up, and if you didn't, hit that thumbs down twice. Alright, and if you never subscribed to me, hit that subscribe button right down there and the little bell symbol right next to it, and that way you get notifications of any upcoming videos. Alright, well, thanks for watching.